right, screw it, let's do this. Sorry everyone, normally I have a gag plan, and I did have a joke where I started off singing the Planet of the Apes musical, but this is the third time we've tried to record this, because our dog is being an asshole. I'm sorry to put it that way, but the dog has been barking and yelping and rolling around and jumping up on us.
And chewing on stuff.
Chewing on things nonstop. I'm sorry, I'm exhausted right now. So let's just go ahead and get right into this discussion. Hey everyone, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Michelle.
And this is the post-Geekout reaction for War for the Planet of the Apes. If you have not seen a post-Geekout reaction before, it is not a review. I do have an actual review of this coming up. The reviews, I sit down, I think of everything I want to say, I write it all out, I read off the script, I edit it all together. It looks all professional and nice. The post-Geekout reaction is just our open, honest discussion about the thing that we just watched, and that does include full spoilers. And you guys are gonna have to forgive us, but as I said, we've already said everything we're about to say 2 times before this, so we're kind of just going through the motions on this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and address that. So many people out there are saying this is probably the best film of the year. I've seen a couple of critics saying this is the best film of the decade. I love the previous 2 Planet of the Apes trilogy films. That is a jumbled mouthful. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Because I love films that have "of the" twice in the title. But I love both of those, and I think this is damn good. I think this is really good.
Yeah.
But it's my least favorite of the trilogy.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the main reason, and it took me a long time to figure out why I feel that way, but I think the main reason why is because this really is Caesar's story. And it makes sense because, as I said, full spoilers on this, so forgive me for just jumping right to it. Caesar dies in this. So it makes sense that this is like the film that focuses entirely on him. Whereas the other films, it was focusing on the apes, Caesar, and the humans. And so you kind of got a sense of like the whole world of this. And because of that, everything felt really big and epic in here. I mean, like, I remember the end of the first one, which it shows like the entire planet being affected by this virus. Like, that seems huge. Yeah. You have like the giant bell and like the Golden Gate Bridge, and then it leads up to the apes being free. It's like, man, that's really big and emotional. And then the, oh my gosh, our dog is running into walls, people. Sorry. He is like crazy active today, and it didn't start until we started recording this. And then the second one, you have got like mankind living in this like city with no electricity, and like the tension is rising between them and the apes, and you're seeing the civilization of both worlds kind of coming head to head with each other. This one, you don't get that sense of the world. And I understand why they did that, because they wanted to be Caesar's story. So everything is just told from Caesar's point of view. Like, you don't even really get a sense of what's happening to the other apes. I mean, there is a moment in which all the other apes, they go off to do their own thing, but then it's revealed that they got captured. You don't even see that happening until Caesar himself learns that it happened, because they just wanted to stick with Caesar. They just wanted this to be Caesar's story. So it's like, okay, I get that. I understand why this doesn't have that big scope of the world. It doesn't have that really big feeling of like what's going on with the humans, what's going on with the apes, because it just wants to be Caesar's story. So I understand that, and I'm not pointing at this and saying that's a problem of the movie. It's not a problem of the movie. That's what they want to do with this movie, and considering that this is the end of Caesar's story, it actually fits. Yeah. It actually makes sense. It's just not what I wanted to see, because I love that idea of what's happening to the whole world from the previous 2 films, and this one didn't have that. It kind of has it. Yeah. But it has it in bits and pieces. Yeah,
like you said, it's mostly from like Caesar's perspective, so you don't really get to see much of what's happening in the other world, and what information you do get is the information Caesar gets, so you are the one who has to like put the pieces together.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the previous films, it was about the world. Yeah. So you got to see the world. This one is about Caesar, so you learn about the world, but you only learn what Caesar's learning as he learns it. And because of that, like, I think it actually does it's actually pretty smart with the way that it just kind of like gives you little bits of information here and there. It's like, yeah, you don't see any human civilization, but you see like an empty Coke truck on the side of the road with just grass growing over everything. So it's like, all right, that gives you an idea of how long it's been since civilization has been out here. Like, there's a gorgeous giant house they go to in the mountains, and it's just like covered in icicles and everything is frozen inside. Like, I thought that was amazing looking, but it's like, okay, so this isn't even like a major part of the city or anything. This is some house way out in the middle of nowhere, and still no one's living there.
A ski lodge.
It might have been. I couldn't tell if it was a mansion that somebody privately owned or like a ski lodge.
Because like they walked past, when they were on horseback, they walked past a ski lift.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that. Okay. But okay, so yeah, again, this isn't a thing that stops and goes, this is what this is. It's, you have to be paying attention as if you were with Caesar on this journey. So I think it's really smart, because that's how they wanted this to feel, and they nailed it perfectly. It just didn't have the big impact of the previous two films had with me, because I enjoyed that view of the world more, where they were just like, here's the view of the world.
I sort of feel like the reason why it feels smaller is because there's like fewer humans.
That's definitely part of it. And that's the other reason. Like I said, part of the reason why we don't get that view of the world is because it's just Caesar's story. But the other reason why is because there isn't that rest of the world left.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was okay with all that up until the end of this film, because you've got Woody Harrelson doing his best Colonel Kurtz impersonation, and he's leading this militia that's out there trying to kill all the apes. And I kept looking at them like, is that what's left of humanity? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's scavengers everywhere out there, but is this like the last, is this what's left of our military? Like, this is the last like group of people fighting this. Everybody else is just like trying to survive out there in little tiny packs. But then at the end of the film, the actual military shows up to fight him. And at that point I realized, oh, there's still civilization in this world. And that's what got to me, because I wasn't really having a problem with this throughout most of this, because I was like, yeah, there isn't humanity left. Humanity's pretty much gone from this. Like, it's just him. We are seeing humanity because it's just him. But then when the actual military shows up to fight him, not only did it make me realize, oh, there's a whole side story going on that we know nothing about, which again makes sense for the way that they want to tell this story, because Caesar wouldn't have known anything about this. And we ourselves can tell, okay, so clearly Harrelson, he left because he didn't like the way the military was doing stuff, and he grabbed everybody that agreed with him, and they formed their own little group, and they took a base, and they took all these weapons away. So it's like, okay, I can tell that from what you're giving me, but it doesn't give me that like feeling of this is the world that I enjoyed from the previous ones. But also, it now raises questions with me, because yeah, I thought that was it for civilization, him and his little militia. Like, everybody else is just a scavenger out there. But when you see the actual army showing up, it's like, okay, so there's still an army. That means there has to be a governing body. Are there civilians still living with them? Like, that was my problem. It just raised all these questions with me. And in the previous films, I enjoyed seeing those questions get answered. In this one, there's no answer to any of it.
You know, I kind of figure, like, basically he went rogue because the infection was getting worse. It was changing the way humans were. They were becoming like more primitive. They were losing their ability to speak. They become
what we see the humans are like in the first Planet of the Apes film. Like, this explains how the humans got to be like that. And that's something that I really enjoyed about his character, is that he's definitely crazy. And he's not even like crazy in like the way that Gary Oldman, I think it was Gary Oldman, but the villain in the previous film was like, he was kind of like, I've been pushed too far. It's like, my child died because of this and all that. His child died, but his child died because he shot him in the head himself. But he did that because his child got the disease, and I was like, yeah, I looked at my kid and he had no brain function anymore, and he was just an animal now. And I realized if he's allowed to live, he's going to spread that to another person. And it's one of those things where it's like, you look at him, it's like, yeah, you're nuts. But that's how desperate mankind has become. Like, he definitely conveys that message of, this is where we're at now. We're all going to turn into dumb animals because of the disease you're carrying. We kill you or it's over for us. That is it. And it's like, yeah, man, there's no negotiating with disease. Like, in the last film, it was like, all right, you know what? All the humans that are left, they have immunity to this disease. They've proven that they have immunity to it. So there's no real reason to kill the apes for that. It was solely just, no, I refuse to live side by side with the apes. And then Cole's like, I refuse to live side by side with the humans. So it was clearly just like, man, these two sides, they're not going to get along. In this one, you could get like the best peace talkers between both groups together, it ain't gonna work out because you can't negotiate with a virus. The virus is going to wipe out mankind unless you take the apes out first. So like, I really dug that. I dug that that was his motivation. Like, yeah, man, you're crazy, but because the situation has pushed you to that point where crazy is the only option. So I really dug that about him. I do not remember at all what we were saying before this, but basically, you said something that I found to be very interesting where, I don't know if you want like...
that I said he's basically like the Koba of the humans.
I think that's a real good way of summing it up, and I love that all throughout this film, the ghost of Koba is haunting Caesar. Like, because Koba was that guy who he couldn't let go of the anger they had for humans, and Caesar, in the beginning of this film, something happens, like Harrelson kills his wife and kid, and I will admit, I was kind of a little bit like, yeah, I saw that coming. But it's effective, and it does set Caesar on this path. So I love that that's what Caesar has to kind of struggle with, because this is the final tale of Caesar. And so I love that this is like his moment of like, do I go down the dark path that Koba went down? And I think it says so much that in the end, like when he comes to kill Harrelson, I knew Harrelson was gonna have the disease. Yeah. Like they set that up a little bit too well. But I love that he just left the gun with Harrelson and was like, I'm not going to like, A, I'm not going to become like Koba, and B, it was kind of him admitting like, the humans have got it real bad right now. Like it was him kind of saying, it's like, the humans are trying to wipe me out, but this is their fate if we live. And he's not like saying like, well, we have to get rid of the apes too. He's not going to say that at all. He is an ape. But it was him kind of saying like, I'm not going to hold that anger for you. I understand your pain, is what he was saying. Is like, so I think that that really did say a lot about the character of Caesar. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I am totally okay with this just being a film that focuses on Caesar. Like I said, I do have some, not complaints, but some issues that I myself would have preferred to see another film that focuses on the world. But I'm okay with this final film being just about Caesar, because there came a moment towards the end of this film where like you've got the army coming in to take out Harrelson, and like this is what's left of mankind just going to war with each other, and then all the apes trying to survive in the trees like that. And there came a moment which I just thought, this all started because James Franco adopted a chimp and tried to cure his dad's Alzheimer's. And when I realized that, I kind of went, I need to sit down and just watch all three of these films back to back in a row just to see that progression from Caesar as a little baby chimp and watching his character arc. Because when you think about that, Caesar's one of the most fascinating characters in cinematic history. Like, I will go ahead and flat out say that, because so many other movies, characters don't change that much from one to the next. Like, I'm honestly thinking about another film where someone had that big of an arc, and really just like the first to the last Godfather is really the only thing that I can come up with. Like, there's a lot of progression in those, but this might be it. Like, I have not seen another film where someone just goes from like, where someone and the entire world, I should say that, so a character and the entire world changes that much from one film to the next. Like, that really is just kind of stunning to me that they were able to pull something like that off. So, yeah, I do get why this is just Caesar's story. It's just that when I take a couple points off, it's just my own personal points because I like the stuff in the other films better. Yeah. But I get what they were doing with this, and it works for this.
Yeah, like, another issue I have with this is the comedy.
Yeah, and even if we hadn't have done this 2 times already, I would know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about Bad Ape.
Yeah, and the poop throwing scene.
The poop throwing scene. The poop throwing scene I'll give you, because I was like, oddly enough, earlier in this film, I actually thought, it's weird that we've had 3 films about chimps and we never got a throwing poop joke in here. And then that happens later in the film. I was like, there it was. But it just didn't feel right. Like, it felt like, dude, you apes are too evolved to be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I expect that from, like, the first movie or something.
Yeah, in the first film, it would have been fine. But it's like, in this one, it's like, nah, man. You've come too far. Yeah. But, yeah, so that one I'll give you. But when I was watching Bad Ape up there, he's he's got a bunch of humor in here, and a lot of his humor is like pratfalls or dumb jokes.
Yeah.
And I laughed at them. I actually thought they were really funny, but even as I was laughing at them, I kept stopping to think, yeah, but I wonder if it works for everyone. Like, I could, even though I found them funny, I could stop and think, I don't think everyone's going to dig this. So it's really interesting that, like, you specifically, like, came in here and was like, yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah, it's like, I just felt like it went a little overboard. Like, the comedy was, like, too slapsticky for this kind of movie.
It's not so, like, I always bring it up that in really tense films, it's really good to put a joke here or there.
Yeah.
Just so that way you can kind of, like, release the tension a little bit. But here, the humor, it's so not in the same tone as the rest of this film. Yeah, like a perfect example to me is when he grabs the binoculars and looks through them and goes, oh no, why are they so small? And then he just comes and flips it around. Oh, I laughed hysterically at that, but it did not match up the tone with the rest of this film. So I was like, yeah, I see other people having a problem with this.
Yeah, I also kind of like felt bad when people were laughing at him because Bad Ape went through like so much, and I kind of felt like it was like laughing at someone with like a mental disability. Like, he had like post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah,
so.
it's one of those things where I can understand someone feeling that way, because all the jokes are kind of at the expense of him not being as stable as the other apes. And the thing is, that says a lot about his character. Like, it makes you feel bad about laughing for him because, A, he's got almost no hair, and he's tweaky and twitchy and stuttering all over the place. And it's like, you can tell, first off, not only that, but also the fact that he actually thinks his name is Bad Ape. Yeah. Because that's just what the humans yelled at him so much. You can tell this guy just was tortured and abused so much at that zoo that he was at, which, by the way, I think that was an actual zoo that he referenced.
Oh, the Sierra Zoo?
Yeah, I think it actually is, because in the closing credits, it actually thanked a zoo. And I had a brief moment in which I was kind of like, do you guys realize that when you signed off on this, they kind of said they needed your zoo in there so that they could say, yeah, they abuse their animals there. I don't know if that's specifically what they were trying to say.
I don't think it was the zoo that abused him. It was the human zoo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that makes him a really interesting character. Like, all the humor, I think, kind of adds to that. Yeah. But it is a weird feeling.
Yeah, it's like, he's a great character, but not
But really I can see people having problems with him. Yeah.
Great character, not so great with the comedic effect, basically. For me, anyways.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to be divisive, but I think we can all agree he's a great character. Yeah. Which, was one of those things where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, because also it's Steve Zahn playing him. I think it was Steve Zahn. I can't remember his name. The dad in the Diary of the Wimpy Kid films. But yeah, he's the guy who when I heard he was playing that ape, I was like, for real? But then there's that moment where he runs off, falls down, and goes, I'm okay. And I was like, he's not even doing a voice there. That was him talking. Which I also, speaking of how this is a story where you get little views and glimpses of the world based on the adventure that Caesar's going on, I love that, like, they never stop and just go, the apes are taking over. The apes are getting smart all over the world. The virus is making the apes smart as well, even the ones who didn't come from this experiment. I love that when he just pops up and he's like, he's not part of our group. He's not, but he can speak and he knows all of this stuff. And I love that, like, they didn't have to stop and say that. Like, we, the audience, were able to tell, oh, so the virus doesn't just make humans dumb, it's making any other ape that comes in contact with smart as well. That's how you get a Planet of Apes. Yes. But speaking of a Planet of Apes, let's get into the one other problem I have with it. And we're going to go in and praise a bunch of other stuff. Like I said, I really did like this film, but so did everyone out there. Like, so many people are calling this the best film of the year. I just gotta come in here and just point out those few things that I did indeed have a problem with. My fingers are being nerdy all of a sudden. The other problem I have is that they meet up with a young girl who is now suffering from the virus, and the virus has made it so that she is dumber and she can't talk. She is basically reverting to her primal animal-like state, like all the humans in the future. And it's Nova, who was the girl from the very original Planet of the Apes film that Charlton Heston runs into if they had called her any other name, I would have been fine with it. I would not have had any kind of a problem with it. And again, if you just want to judge this as its own film or judge it as part of this trilogy, it doesn't affect you at all. But I couldn't help it. This was just, hello fly, this was just screaming in my mind the entire film. I kept looking at her and thinking, she's like 10 years old in here, and she's like 25 in that original Planet of the Apes film. That means the original Planet of the Apes film is like 15 years from now, and I kept thinking the original Planet of the Apes film was like generations down the line. I kept thinking it was like 100 or 200 years into the future. And, hey buddy, sorry for the interruption. As I said, I kept thinking to myself that the original Planet of the Apes film, it had to be like 100, 200, 1,000 years in the future. This is just how the apes begin to get like that. But when I realized, oh, it's like 15 years in the future, all I could think throughout the rest of this film was, how in God's name in 15 years are you going to get from here to there? How in 15 years are the apes going to get to the point where they're wearing clothes, they have an entire civilization, they have a court of law established? Because they say in this one, it's been 15 years since the virus began. In the first one, they haven't come that far. They're still living exactly the same way they were in the previous film. They haven't progressed that much. But in another 15 years, they're going to build houses and clothes and a court system and prisons for the humans. And also, you adopt Nova in this, and she basically becomes like the pet, and like they all love her, and she's palling around with them. It's like, oh, there she's part of the family. How in another 15 years is she going to get locked in the jail cell with Charlton Heston? How does that happen to her? And in another 15 years, how in God's name does New York City turn into a beach where you have the Statue of Liberty just hanging out there? It's like, I can't picture that now happening in just 15 years. Like I said, you named her anything else, these problems don't exist. But because they not only name her that, but they are very clearly like, yeah, she's the girl from that. See, we're referencing that. I'm like, this doesn't match up at all now. Yeah, I know it's like a nerdy thing. And like I said, for anybody who just wants to judge this film on its own, and for anybody who just wants to judge this part of that trilogy, you're not going to be affected by this at all. But I can't help it, man. You guys know I'm a geek, and a big part of being a geek is connecting dots. There is a clear dot here, and I can't see how those two connect. It's like, no, you gotta go like this to make that connection. So yeah, that was a problem I had. And she's very good. I think that the actress is good.
Yeah.
I think she adds a lot to this because she shows that the apes still have compassion for the humans. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're showing that the apes have compassion for the humans, but she's gonna end up becoming like a prisoner in like 15 years?
Yeah.
How do you get to that? Like, what happens to their compassion? And I feel like this is definitely the end of the trilogy. However, I feel like at the end of this trilogy, you need to be able to let me know this is how we get to that original film. And I was looking at this as like, I thought I knew how we were going to get there, but literally just with the introduction of Nova, it raises so many questions. And Fox has already said they're looking into making another film or possibly even another like series of film, like another trilogy, like, explain the connection from that prequel to the originals, like a mid-quel.
I'll be fine if they make one more movie, but like another trilogy
seems like pushing it.
Yeah, it's way too much.
Like I said, this original trilogy, it was all about Caesar. And this last film was definitely all about Caesar. I would dig one more movie showing the last humans around, and like showing how messed up the world's gotten, how desperate they've gotten, maybe showing them like launching some missiles or stuff to try and take out the apes, and that's how New York just gets destroyed and covered in sand and becomes a wasteland or something. Although again, if you're like launching like nukes, 15 years, it'd still be totally full of like radiation. So, I mean,
maybe the radiation is how the apes evolve even faster.
That's the other thing that got me. Like, okay, in 15 years, they're all still hunched over like this. Like, their bodies have not changed at all. I mean, I think Caesar's gotten maybe a little bit bigger, but I mean, they're still the same. How in another 15 years are they now going to be walking totally upright and as tall as humans? Again, if this was like hundreds of years, I could see like, yeah, totally, that's how evolution, like, combined with this disease would have changed them, but yeah, man, it just doesn't work to me. So yeah, literally, it's such a small thing, but if they had just given her any other name, it would have been like, I do not have these questions now. That I don't need any further films. I would have been fine with it. Also, it's kind of implied that the area that they arrive at the end of this film is where all the apes live in the original Planet of the Apes film, because they said it's a desert, and it's like, okay, well, they live in a desert, so I was like, okay, it's kind of implied that that's where Charlton Heston touches down. That's definitely like in the middle of the country. How the hell does that at the end of that film he end up at New York City?
It's on the West Coast. You remember the food portions that Bad Ape gave him? It said California border on it.
Well, yeah, and they were in San Francisco this whole time.
Yeah.
But like, remember where they leave? He said like, when his son comes back, he's like, here, desert. We found a desert. We can go and live there and we'll be fine. That's where they make the big trek to at the end of this film.
Yeah, I was thinking that'd be like in like Nevada or something.
Like, that's my point. It's like in the middle of the country now. So if that's where they are at the original Planet of the Apes film, does Charlton Heston just ride a horse at the end of that film all the way from Nevada to New York City?
Maybe.
This makes no freaking sense. Like I said, it's such a nitpick, and it should not affect my view of this film, but I can't help it. Again, I love this film. This film is great. But man, that geeky, obsession of mine to connect stuff, it's just screaming. It's like, this doesn't work. But that's really my only complaints. And again, they're things that I totally see nobody else having a complaint with this, because it's not even like a quality thing. It's not even like, oh, the acting's bad, the editing is bad, the writing is bad. No, all those things are amazing. It's solely just like, I feel like somebody should have come in here and gone, guys, I know what you're trying to do with Nova. It doesn't work. It will mess up the original film. Just name her literally anything else and we're good. And someone is probably going to come in the comments and go, well, he didn't say it's the actual Nova. Maybe that's like her great-great-granddaughter and they just passed the name down. It's like,
but
in that case, it's just weird fan service for no reason. It's like, you would not have named her Nova if there was not a reason to name her Nova. So yeah, that's really it. But aside from that, this film is damn good.
Oh, it is.
We already talked about Bad Ape and him. We already talked about Woody Harrelson. But we gotta talk about Caesar himself.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis, again, I think his performance in the last one was a little bit better, just simply because... But I think that's just solely because I was so stunned at what they could do in the last one, and this one's like, okay, it's this again. I've seen it. But he's still really freaking good. But also in the previous one, he was a little bit more animalistic, so I was just stunned at what he could do. Holy cow, our dog really wants water. Sorry for all the sound he's making in the background. We will get to you in a minute, buddy. But yeah, in the previous one, he was just kind of like crawling around like ape-like, and I was really impressed by it. In this one, I was like, he's just being a human, basically. At this point, not Koba, at this point, Caesar is a human being at this point. Like, he is walking upright, mostly. He doesn't even, talk in the pausing voice. In this one, he just talks like a normal person. Like, it's just Andy Serkis up there. In fact, his face even looks a little bit different in this one. It even looks a little bit more like Andy Serkis' face.
Like more human?
A little bit more human, but I mean, they're mocapping his face. And the previous one, so it was Andy Serkis making expressions, and it would change the ape's expression to be like his.
Right.
And this one, it looks like they changed Caesar's face to actually be kind of Andy Serkis-y. But the effects are so damn good in this that there was one scene where my brain actually went, wow, these rubber suits look amazing. Just simply because my brain refused to believe there's not a thing on screen. Like, it was when he was interacting with Woody Harrelson, and I was like, when he's interacting with the other apes, my brain could go, okay, that's apes up there. That's just apes talking, or that's CGI, but really good CGI. But when he's talking to Woody Harrelson, he looked so damn real that, like, my brain just refused to believe he wasn't. Like, my brain was like, there has to be a thing on screen talking to Woody Harrelson right now. It's inexplainable if there isn't. CGI cannot possibly be this good. But I mean, yeah, every single time that they zoomed in on one of their faces, it was amazing watching that. Like, the effects just look so good on them. Like, every little bump on their face, little wrinkle on there. Like, just the tiny white hairs on Caesar showing how he's gotten older. It's incredible how good it looks. So yeah, the special effects, they look top-notch. But they've looked top-notch in every single one of these films. That's no surprise. I mean, it is surprising how good they look, but we knew they were going to still look amazing. But that's not what made those last two films great. What made them great was the story. And I think the story is still top-notch. Like I said, I might have had some issues that it wasn't the same type of story from the previous ones, and I preferred that type. That this was a smaller film that just focused solely on one character in here. However, it does it incredibly well. And also, this is a war film, and when you hear that it's going to be War for the Planet of the Apes, I picture it's going to be all the apes on one side, all the remaining humans on another. They go at it. At the end, the apes win. They enslave mankind. That's how we get where we are. It's not that type of war at all.
No.
It is more of like a Vietnam small ragtag band of guys behind enemy lines, and then at one point it just turns into a war camp, into a prison camp type of film. Which those are definitely types of war movies. It's just not what we were expecting when we heard War for the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
And I'm impressed that that's what they decided to go with. They went with something completely different from what we were expecting. And I think it works. I think it works very well in this film. Mostly because that quieter sense, it really works for the just focusing on Caesar kind of film. But also, like, the prison escape thing? Yeah, I thought that was actually brilliant. And it really does show, like, Caesar getting pushed to his limits. It showed, because Caesar is having to fight this whole idea of does he kill this human who killed his family, and him being in a camp where they're just being tortured. Yeah, it shows him being pushed even further, but also the fact that he then had to like go and actually communicate with their leader. He had to go and actually try and convince him to give them food. It shows that he still cares for the apes. Like, he is still the leader of his people, and that's what's important to him. But I also think that this really shows, like I said, the thing that made Harrelson such an interesting character is he really kind of showed the desperation of man at this point. And I think there's a lot of stuff in this film. Like, they never stop and actually like turn the camera and say this is what they're doing, but there's a lot of stuff in this film that I feel like you can read into it as these are also kind of images of what happens when people who are in power get really desperate to the point of being absolutely paranoid. Like, without getting too political on you guys, they forced the apes to build a wall, and there's a moment in which he goes, "Why do they need a wall?" And I was just kind of like, "This is a." Are you trying to say this is what happens when crazy people get into power and they're just like, "I'll do whatever I can to try and take care of this thing"? Because yeah, all I could think was of Harrelson coming out there. Like, we're going to build a wall. It's going to be the biggest, greatest wall of all kind, and we're going to make the apes build it themselves. Like, the fact that they made the apes build themselves, I was kind of like, I know what you're doing here. And there's a lot of like imagery from the inn when the apes were like migrating out there to get away from the humans, and it's like, this is like the images I saw from like the Trail of Tears. Like, yeah, like you can draw a metaphor to the apes being a lot of people who've just been discriminated against and
had to be forced off their land.
Had to be forced on their land. And I was like, you can look at the apes as a metaphor for many different groups of people who've had to suffer throughout the history of mankind. And yeah, it's actually kind of stunning to me that they never actually have to stop and like kind of like have Caesar make a speech about the discrimination his people are facing, but like you get it all throughout this film. You can totally look at this and see it as a metaphor for like other groups that have had to suffer. So yeah, it's done incredibly well and shot so well too. Like I said, the imagery of them all on horses there at the end, like that's the thing that really like sells that moment. Or even like when Caesar dies.
Yeah.
That's like a Renaissance painting there of him there just like, and then like Maurice over there, and like the light beaming through the leaves. And I'm like, that's a Renaissance painting of an ape right there is what we're looking at. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the writing and the art directing, just everything in here, just we're working hand in hand. Like I said, I do have issues with this film, but they're issues that I'm not going to come in here and point at and go, well, that's a problem with the movie. It's like, no, it's not a problem, it's an issue. And the difference being, issues are personal. It's a thing that I can feel, and I don't think it's going to be something that other people are going to feel. A problem is where you can point at it and go, no. Let me explain to you why this is messed up. Nothing in here is messed up. It all works pretty darn well. Like I said, I got problems with the Nova thing. I think that could be a problem, but only if you want to connect the dots. If you're going to this thing and you're like, just view it as its own thing. Don't worry about the connection. You're not going to have that problem at all. Is there anything else that we're missing? Because there's a lot of good stuff in here. I also really dug that there were apes working on the side of the humans. And I was like, why on earth would there be apes working with the humans? Like, I thought they were probably like apes who had been, when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, these are probably apes who have been like tortured to the point where like they like obey the humans. But then when he says they are ones who are still loyal to Koba, I was still confused because like Koba wanted to get rid of the humans more than anybody. But I was like, nah, man, that's how twisted like messages and like morale can get when it's like, okay, well, this is what one person believed, and we twist it into being the rationalization of this thing. Because it got twisted from we have to take out the humans to we have to take out Caesar because Caesar's the guy who took out Koba, so that means working with the people that Koba hated.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, there's a lot being said.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly. So. There's a lot being said in there. And I kind of dug that. I kind of dug seeing like how like alliances kind of like shifted all throughout here. Like with Winter, the big white gorilla. I was really kind of stunned that like he sold out Caesar like early on in this, because like it kind of shows like, man, yeah, see, they're not just big dumb animals. It was like, that's our leader, we're gonna follow him no matter what. It's like, no, man, there's like rebellious sects inside the ape kingdom here.
Also, he was afraid. That was the reason why he rebelled. Like Winter wanted to leave right away to like the desert because the troops were coming in. And Caesar was trying to explain, it's like, we're not ready yet, we need to prepare. And because of that, Winter decided to, like, give in to the humans because he wanted his life to be spared, but then he realizes...
Yeah, it's like, they're human. They're very human creatures because they feel these feelings just like humans do. So yeah, the fact that he was motivated by fear, it was a very, like, understandable thing. It's like, I either join them or they're going to come and kill us. Those are my options. So yeah, I can't think of anything else I want to say about this film, but I mean, I feel like I should because there's just so much good stuff in here. Like I said, it is my least favorite of the trilogy just simply because I did have those issues with this.
Yeah.
But I can fully understand other people find
it's like,
this to be their favorite.
The previous movies were like an A, this would be like an A- or something.
Yeah, maybe like that. Like, I wouldn't even go like A+ on the previous ones. This one,
just a solid A?
Solid A or A-. Like, I might give it an A-, but the minus is coming in solely from my own, like, personal issues. It's like, you know, I would have preferred to see some of this stuff, and, like, this thing here doesn't make sense. Also, I just kind of found it weird that none of the other apes talk. That's not, again, that's an issue. That's not something I'm even going to knock any points off of. I just want to bring that up as, like, there comes a point in which, like, it's Maurice just there with Bad Ape, and he knows Bad Ape doesn't understand sign language, and he's still just using sign language, and I was like, we know you can talk! We know all of you can talk! Just talk to him!
Well, I feel like maybe because, like, the apes were enslaved, they were, like, forced not to talk, they were just shut up and work.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, they were too afraid to speak up or something like that, so...
I could see that being, like, an interesting thing. But yeah, also there were moments in which they're doing sign language behind Caesar's back, and Caesar is responding to them. It's like, you can't see what they're doing behind you. Maybe you could just understand the grunts still.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, I wasn't sure if, like, the grunts were actually, like, part of it or not. But...
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, the sign language thing in here, I don't think it works as well as it does in the other films.
Yeah.
But again, very small, minor nitpicks.
Yeah, very minor nitpicks.
Aside from that, really enjoyed it. And I would go ahead and flat out say this is the best trilogy of any film series I've ever seen. Because every other trilogy out there, even if you love every part of that trilogy, there's that one part of it that you know a lot of other people have problems with, a lot of other people don't enjoy that much, a lot of other people might think it might have been, like, faulty. Like, you know, the original Star Wars trilogy, a lot of people kind of have problems with Return of the Jedi, so it's like, alright, we can't all agree on that. The Dark Knight, a lot of people have problems with that last one, with The Dark Knight Rises, so we can't all agree on that. In fact, I even think the Captain America trilogy is better than the Dark Knight one, but even I'll come in here and admit a lot of people have problems with part 1. I loved it, but a lot of people have problems with it, so we can't agree on that. And also, part 3 of that one is more of just Avengers Part 2, so can't agree on that being a trilogy. So yeah, this is the first time in my life that I can think of, oh my god, we have a trilogy, and every part is undisputedly great. Not even good, just great. Because even with the problems I have with this one, I'm probably being tougher on this film than anyone else out there. Still, like I said, it's still an A. A- at worst.
You know, there are probably some people out there who argue that the Toy Story trilogy is also, but...
Brother, let's be honest. No one gave a crap about Toy Story 2 until Toy Story 3 came out, and it was amazing. And then they went, oh, and I really like Toy Story 2. It's like, too late to the party, brother. It's like, no one was... Like, I remember for years, Toy Story 2 was like, yeah, it's okay. Like, that was what everyone thought. Everyone was like, yeah, Toy Story 2, it's fine, it's whatever. Then Toy Story 3 comes out, it's amazing, makes the entire world cry, and they go, oh, and Toy Story 2, such a great second chapter. It's like, that ain't what you were saying a couple months ago, motherfucker. So yeah, sorry for my language and talking about Toy Story, but it's like, that's something that bugged me for years when people talk about that being an amazing trilogy. I was like, nobody out there was praising Toy Story 2 until Toy Story 3 was so damn good.
I personally like Toy Story 2 better than 3, but that's just...
Really now? Okay.
Yeah, like, for me, like, Toy Story 3 felt like Toy Story 2 plot-wise.
Here's the thing, I was listening to another podcast, someone said that exact thing when they brought up Toy Story as another great trilogy. They said Toy Story 3 is just Toy Story 2 all over again. So I was like, again, it's something that people dispute. It's something that people can come in here and have problems with. This one, even with problems, you gotta come in here and go, yeah, well, it's an amazing fucking, like, sequence, and, like, every single film is at least an A- at the smallest. And also, like, Toy Story 3, great ending to that franchise. I don't think Toy Story 2 really adds anything onto the... I mean, it adds new characters.
Yeah, it adds new characters, but it doesn't, like, add the final chapter. Yeah.
It doesn't, like, progress anything. This one, beginning, middle, end. Like, yeah, it's a trilogy. Toy Story was a series of films that just happened to have 3 of them in there. And now they're making a 4th one, so go fuck yourself, it's no longer a trilogy. This one, even if they do come in here and go, well, we're making a 4th one that explains how they get to the original film, this is the Caesar trilogy. Like, you can look at as the Caesar trilogy. So I was like, you know what? Cool, done. So I do think this is the best trilogy we've ever gotten. But thank you guys. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this. Sorry that we were rushing through this so quickly because, like I said, my dog has been going nuts today. So we had to, like, I just have him, I had to redo, I'm tired.
Yes.
I'm so tired. I've had to do this 3 goddamn times already. So, sorry about all of this. Normally we're way more professional. If you want to see the way more professional post-Geekout reactions or the reviews where I do actually act professional, I sit down and write everything out, and make sure that you click that subscribe button right down there and contact us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Twitch at Professional Thorgy. Thank you guys very much. Come back next time. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my god, I'm so tired.
Poop.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee. No, you'll never make a monkey out of me. Oh my gosh, I was wrong. It was Earth all along. I guess you finally made a monkey. Yes, we finally made a monkey. How many of you get that reference?
Should have named Dr. Zayas. I think people are more familiar with that song.
Ooh, help me, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Help me, doctor. I think you're crazy. I want a second opinion. You're also lazy. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Can I play the piano anymore? Well, of course you can. Well, I couldn't before. Oh, God, I miss when The Simpsons were good.